Hello and welcome to another video today where I'm going to be talking about a question that I get asked almost every day. How to know when to progress a rehabilitation phase from one to the next. Alright, so let's get into it. So pain, not fun, and training with injury is pretty tough. So the assessments that we would use are critical in the beginning and all the way through, because they pretty much tell you when you're ready to, or where to start to begin with, but when you're ready to move on. And there's no magic one size treatment or exercise that will ever fix you. It's just a series of progressive steps. So a lot of people say, oh, that squats are the best exercise for knees, and they are and they aren't, because for some people they're just a bad thing to do, and some people they just can't do them. So there's a series of other things they need to do before they can even get to the squat, and even when they've done the squat there's other things they still need to do after that. So can you see how there's not just one thing you need to do, there's multiple, but you can't do them all at once. You have to break them up and do them in a gradually progressively harder series of steps. That's the only way that you can do it. So the typical approach that we would use is flexibility or mobility, sort of in the same area. Moving into stability, which is sort of where your movements skills are, where they're not loaded but they're integrated. You're just really coordination and trying to time things really well here. And only once you've done those two things can you apply strength. Some of the isolated strength is also, you could almost say there's like a part two of this one, sort of fall in this category, but the true strengthening is not really done until you've done that well. And then the last phase is the power. So in all of our reports you'll find there's step-by-step guides for shoulder, step-by-step guides for ACL injuries, knee injuries, back injuries, on and on we go. And they're all done in that step-by-step thing, because we're sort of trying to show you how you move gradually from one phase to the next. If you have problems at one, say if your problem's here, you just go back one. In some cases you might need to go back two. But it's easier to sort of retrace your steps and then gradually, so you don't sort of skip something, go from here to there, which is what we see a lot, and that's where big problems eventuate from doing that. So how do you know when to progress? Well, it's impossible to give you a blanket answer, because it depends. There's just so many things. Age, times per week you're training, the type of injury you have, how many injuries you have, the degree of pain you have, if you had surgery, other injuries. All these things are things that can influence the answer to that question. So you know, it's really just impossible to, and on the other thing here, like I mentioned, is the way people respond is another thing again. So you really have to base it on the assessments, like I've said before. So the testing is critical. So if the best piece of advice I could give to you is to, before you decide to move on from one phase to the next, make sure you've mastered whatever you've been doing. So whether it's the stretching or the mobility, or it's the stability drills, or even the strength drills before the power phase, you really sort of know it inside and out, and you've taken it to the best it can be, and there's no pain. So if any time there's pain, you can't move on if you've got pain. You have to probably reduce what you're doing and go back a step. If something causes pain, always go back a step. Any time the test that you're using, if you're really struggling with it and failing with it, then that test itself becomes the exercise. And it's telling you something's not right, that has to be addressed. You can't move forward while that's still got problems. And as you go through each phase, you just keep retesting yourself. So what are the tests to use? Well, again, it depends on the injury, how much pain you have, because there's different tests for different phases, I suppose. You know, and as I said, each phase, the specific tests become the exercises. So, for example, in the first phase, the knee to wall stretch, which is an ankle mobility assessment, if there's a problem here, this itself might become the test and the exercise, along with maybe a couple of other things. But when this begins to improve, I know that I can move to the next phase of whatever I'm doing. And in the stability phase, it might be the single leg squat, where I can't really load things up if I'm still struggling with the body weight version. I'm going to really have to regress this and really learn how to master it before I can do anything extra with it. If I've taken a bit of a snapshot here from the shoulder pain report and the ACL report, and this gives you an idea of a stability checklist for shoulder pain. And you can sort of see here, these are the exercises, so breathing assessments, inner unit, lower abdominal, scapular and thoracic mobility and stability drills, glute strength, single leg lunge. Now these are different tests that obviously I'm going to use for an ACL thing, because I don't really need to check scapular stability if I'm dealing with an ACL thing. There's some parts of upper body that I'll definitely need it later on, but not at this stage. So I'm going to really be looking a lot closer at hip centration and foot stability in this one than I am over here. Alright, so you can see how I need to be able to master all of these before I move to the strength stage. If I have a deficit or a weakness here, it becomes a bigger problem in the strength stage. So that I need to be sure that I can pass these before I move on. So the most important thing, there's no bad pain present before you move forward. Alright, and I mentioned that before because the reason is, if you have bad pain, I've mentioned bad pain here because there's good pain and bad pain, but the bad pain is like really joint pain. If you've got any of that present and you're trying to move forward in your program, it's not a good idea, because it's going to force you to compensate around it. It'll change the way you move quicker than anything else. So you can't move into integrated strength exercises if you've got pain. The first thing you've got to do is reduce the inflammation, and usually the mobility side of things is the way to sort of reduce inflammation. That's why a lot of people do a lot of stretching, get massage, acupuncture, because it takes the weight of the pain, but unfortunately it doesn't finish the job. So just removing pain doesn't mean you're finished. So, but the very important thing to understand is you can't train with bad pain. All right, so too much pain looks like this, so no improvement. If you don't have enough good pain, and there's articles and videos we've done on this before, you can look them up. You can see here, if I don't apply enough good pain, I still don't get any improvement. I've got to have a certain amount, but not too much. So I've been a bit vague so far, so to help you out I'm going to give you some estimates. Just understand that the key word here being estimates. So these are not hard and fast rules, all right? And they really need to be, you really need to test yourself to be certain, but to give you some rough ideas, I thought I'd give you something that we roughly would see most of the time. So in the mobility flexibility stage, which is usually the start of the program when you're in a lot of pain, these are the things that you would do and you'd need to do to reduce the pain and inflammation, and you'd need to do them every day. This phase usually is quite quick, so usually within 2 to 4 weeks you start to feel like you're responding to some of the stuff and you're already ready for this stability phase. Usually within 2 weeks you're sort of trying to get some of them in there as soon as possible, because we really need to get them in there as quickly as we can. Over 90% respond well. Some don't, like the hypermobile people you would find early on, but you should have found that out in the assessment anyway, and you would find that that's not a good thing to apply this sort of stuff. Anytime you have pain, you just go back to finding what it was that was stiff and tight that needed to be released. Your massage, your chiropractic adjustments, acupuncture, all of that sort of stuff falls into this category, and it's in the early phases of when there's a lot of inflammation. All right, and you need to do this to reduce the hyperactivity of the tonic muscles, inhibiting weaker muscles. So that's another reason why it's at the beginning. The stability phase, a much more delicate phase, so usually a very frustrating part, and a very, very minimum amount of 4 weeks, but really I could see this, I've put here 10 weeks, I could sometimes see this be 3 to 4 months, just depending on the type of, shoulders in particular. That can take quite a long time to sort of get the person being able to sort of get to a point where we can move forward into the strength phase. Exercises for knee and hip and related injuries, and even foot related, like the toe touch drill here, can take quite a long time to master. Like the weakness in the feet and around how it's all sort of coordinated is still out of sequence. So the brain just needs time to sort of see this and understand it and know how to make it work better. And only once I've done that can I move forward into the more strength-orientated single leg drills. The isolated strength exercises such as clams and things like that, serratus anterior drills, they can be added in this stage, and they definitely assist in the learning of it. But you really try to master this stage before you move on to the strength. All right. So in the strength phase, And you'll notice each time that we're sort of moving forward, the minimum is more and the maximum is more. So the first one was 2 to 4, the second one was 4 to 10, this is 8 to 12. So as it gets progressively harder, it takes progressively longer before you can move forward. It's not like a blanket 4, 4, 4. It doesn't work like that at all. So there's so many more things that can go wrong. All right, so a lot of things to consider, and when we're in this stage, we're really looking at the whole body. That's why there's so many moving pieces. So this phase where most people find their real long-time solution, but make no mistake, it comes with risk. If your technique is not right from the previous stage, then you're gonna suffer for it. You're gonna pay a price. All right. The last one is the power stage, and this again, it comes with a high risk. It's very important for sports though. Again, it can take quite a long time, and this is when you're at this stage, you're probably fluctuating between strength and power and stability all the time because you're nearly finished here. This is just where you're really learning to do things quickly and execute more sport-specific things if you play sports, and really learning how to get master the timing of movement. All right, a very important phase, but again, you can see why it's last, because it's probably the riskiest. If you get it wrong, there's a big disaster here. Training frequency, so the frequency of the sessions for each phase decreases as you progress. So the flexibility is every day, the stability is every second day, the strength is only 3 times per week, and the power will be only 2 times per week. So you can roughly see each phase has a training frequency of daily and a time frame of like fairly short, and as it goes along, the time frame's quite long and the frequency is quite short. All right. This is a good little thing to sort of get an understanding of how often you would train for, say, a strength thing. A person who overtrains is not going to get good results. A person who undertrains is not going to get good results. They sort of need to have that nice period of stimulus and recovery. All right. Very important in the rehab stage to get the most out of what you're trying to restore back to balance again. So in summary, assessment's critical. Use the tests to determine if you're ready to progress. If you feel like you've mastered the phase, move on. You'll need to keep various drills from the beginning of all the way throughout the program. So keep notes on what has been the key thing that you found that made the difference in the beginning. Don't progress through the stability phase too fast. I see that people do that all the time because they get bored with it. But that's very important for the strength phase. Decrease the frequency of your training the further you move into the harder phases, and at any point you develop pain, go back a step or back to the mobility phase and work your way through it again. All right, and that's sort of pretty much what we do all the time, and you can see like how there's no way I can sort of tell you exactly how many weeks it's going to be without, because it can change all the time. All right, so if you have any questions, just go to our website. There's stacks of stuff. If you want some of these reports I've mentioned, these are just some of the ones that we've got there on various things, and then you'll notice they're always done in these step-by-step formats because it's easy for you to sort of work your way through. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed that, and we'll see you on our